Man, it has been a whirlwind of news today in the world of Marvel Snap. We've got a lot to break down in this video. So kicking things off, earlier today, there was a patch notes leak that popped up on a Korean website. You're seeing a translated version of those patch notes here behind me. You don't need to read these. I've got some graphics to showcase all of this throughout the video. And there were some super controversial changes in this one, like a leader only losing a single power when many people were expecting a much bigger nerf to a card like leader, and some weird changes like Nova losing a single power. Like, where on earth did that come from? And some buffs as well to accompany these big nerfs. And people were debating whether or not this was real. Well, just an hour or two ago, Brode popped up on Twitter, more or less confirming that indeed these patch notes are real, but adding some additional context, in particular to the leader change. So now we think these patch notes are real, perhaps not perfectly translated, requiring some additional context, but the card changes seem like they are in fact going to hit. Now, this patch was actually supposed to land, I guess, today or maybe even yesterday, I forget exactly when, but it got delayed by up to a week. There was some unforeseen thing that happened and they had to delay the patch, so we should still expect these changes sometime in the next week. Now, what are the changes and what are the controversies? Well, I think we should absolutely kick it off with leader. Prepared some nice graphics here for you guys so you don't have to read these tiny little text boxes on screen. Leader is going from a 6'4" to a 6'3". Now, just again, to be totally clear, these are not 100% confirmed. I would say, though, they're like 99.7% confirmed. So these could change before the patch hits, but as we'll see, Brode comments on these changes as if they're real. So leader's going down to a 6'3". Now, that is, of course, a tiny change. It has no impact on the functionality of the card of leader. It will just very occasionally impact the ability for leader to swing the location he's played on. So sometimes, for instance, you'll be down by 3 power in a location where you play leader. His 4 power will swing you ahead there, and then any cards that he summons will match the opponent in that location, and then hopefully in other locations as well, preserving your lead. So sometimes you don't need to do that. Sometimes you're just ahead in 2 locations anyway, and leader is totally fine even if he were a 6-0. But there are instances where you need his power to swing the location in your favor, and those pop up perhaps more often than you might expect. So the power difference here is technically meaningful, right? There will be those instances where now he won't be able to swing a location, and at best he might provide like a tie instead of a full power swing. And, you know, 1 out of 20 games or something, that will make a difference. You might not win with leader when you otherwise would have. But that said, of course, people are so sick of this effect, and it's really the way leader works that is so frustrating for people. Maybe not just the outright power level of the card, although I would maintain that that's actually pretty high as well. And that's caused a lot of frustration. People are like, what? Only 1 power? That's not anything at all what I wanted for leader. I wanted so much more to see as a change for leader. And Brode came in with comments to address these concerns and also, of course, kind of soft confirm that these leaks are indeed real. He said there's some discussion about a card nerf leak where leader gets a 1 power reduction. There might be some context missing I wanted to clear up. Here's the note that was intended to accompany that change. Leader's effect is proving to be very frustrating to many players and polarizing in its ability to lock down games and discourage playing some other 6-cost cards. We are taking a bit of power away from him for now and exploring further changes to the card in the future. That last sentence is not intended to mean we may or may not change him again. It is intended to mean we are determining exactly which change to make. So in other words, this nerf to leader is a bit of a stopgap. This is not their final plans for the card. Perhaps they needed to iterate on some designs, actually literally maybe program some different changes, maybe get some approval from Disney, whoever else, the Marvel overlords, to change an effect for a card. That's at least some rumor on Twitter. And they needed more time, basically. So they wanted to adjust leader in the meantime, throw us a bone a little bit for a leader nerf, and then make some more significant changes down the road as they either figure those out, implement them, approve them, whatever the holdup might actually be. I think they could have gone a little further with this holdover nerf, maybe push leader to a 6-2 or something just to make it feel more substantial, because this feels very, very small in the scheme of things. But this is where we land. I want to know what you guys think. Was this enough? Generally I'm in favor of smaller nerfs. I like taking things a little more subtly in regards to nerfs. I think smaller incremental changes can have a bigger impact than people often realize, but this one feels really, really small even to me. But I want to hear your take, so we'll move on to the next card. So next up, we've got the exact same change here for Galactus. He's going to a 6-2 instead of a 6-3. Now, as I've said earlier in some of my nerf theory videos and stuff, I didn't really think Galactus needed a nerf. This is a card that telegraphs its lines so hard. You almost always know exactly when your opponent's going to play Galactus. Sometimes that's disrupted very easily. Sometimes you just still overpower the Galactus with your own big cards because they're just playing from too far behind on occasion. And then if you don't, you just retreat, often for 1 cube, maybe 2 if they snapped super early. So 1 out of 3 times the opponent wins with the Galactus, I feel like, and they only win a little. And I feel like every other time this card is so easily handled and dealt with and predicted. Maybe that's different across different rank brackets for people who haven't had as much exposure to this card or don't expect it. Perhaps this was like a casual player nerf to protect them. But all in all, I didn't really think this card needed a change. Now, that said, a change to 6-2 is so minimal here for Galactus that I think it'll have almost 0 impact on when this card wins. I think that 1 power will very rarely ever make a difference. Of course, it can. Of course, we've all seen ties and tiny little baby wins with Galactus that will 1 in 100 games matter, but very often won't. Now, actually, though, I've heard an argument, and I think there's some reason to this, that this may be a small buff to Galactus in some instances, because sometimes it's actually better if you're revealing from behind with Galactus, because you want to do things like Shang-Chi, your opponent's big play. So play like Shang-Chi plus death, and then that hopefully secures you the victory. Now, I will say that, usually if you're only playing a Galactus in your location, you're kind of behind anyway very often at 3 power. Maybe Wolverine could change that a little bit if you're running Wolverine in your list. So I don't really think this will change reveal priority all that often, but technically might help you get under something and play a Shang-Chi more easily. So really, really minimal change here. As far as I'm concerned, a pretty unnecessary change. So both surprising and probably not all that meaningful, which maybe that's good if it doesn't need a change in the first place. So next up here, we have Arrow with the exact same change yet again, only losing a single power, going down to 7 power instead of 8. I thought we might see this get reverted all the way back to 6, where this card actually initially started at, before people kind of realized how good it was going to be. It got buffed to 8, then it was insane. 6 seemed reasonable because his effect is so good. Losing 1 power here isn't going to matter too much. I mean, there are instances where power matters for Arrow, but there are plenty of others where her effect is the primary aspect, where you're just playing this in a losing lane anyway, and the power is kind of irrelevant because you're planning to win the other 2 locations by pulling all of your opponent's power on that final turn into a meaningless location that they're already winning. That effect will still persist. That will remain really powerful for Arrow. And then, the instances where you're using her for her big body, she'll be a little weaker, but only minimally so. I still think Arrow remains a very, very powerful card here at 7 power. So the next up here, we have the final nerf, and perhaps one of the most discussed of all. Nova is going down to 1 power instead of 2. Which is a little strange, because you assume if Nova's so powerful that it's worthy of getting nerfed, that the reason it's powerful is because of its effect, right? Oh man, I'm giving all this extra power to the rest of the board. Nova used to give 2 power to everything, which was totally insane back in the day, but they're still apparently unhappy with +1 power. So they moved him down to 1, which of course doesn't change his destroy upside here. He's still able to distribute all that power to the rest of the board. So I guess they're saying, like, in instances where Nova doesn't connect, we want Nova to feel a little bit weaker, so that you're not able to get that 2 power normal 1 cost efficiency if he's not connecting, which I mean, I guess that's fine. Most of the time you're planning to kill Nova, you're hoping to kill Nova, so for the decks that want to destroy Novas, I don't think they're going to care at all about this nerf. But I guess on those few tiny instances where he's left behind, he doesn't get cleared, your opponent plays an armor, etc., this will limit his ability to be quite as efficient as other 1 cost cards, which again, I guess technically will have an impact very occasionally, but I think a pretty minimal one at that. So there were also some buffs in these patch notes as well. Hazmat is going up to 2 power. I think that's completely a fine change. This card exists in some kind of meme combo stuff, but nothing, all that crazy powerful for Hazmat at the moment. This might make the card a little bit better as a standalone option, where you're maybe just happy to play this a little more reliably, kind of a scorpion, but for the board, basically, as opposed to now it feels pretty relegated to combo stuff. So I think that's an intriguing change. If you're playing, you know, from behind a little bit, don't expect to have stuff, and there's a meta where your opponent's already played 3 or 4 cards, Squirrel Girls are out there, or whatever, a tempo 2-drop Hazmat might be okay as a 2/2. We've also got Nakia here going up to 2 power as well. Effect remaining unchanged for this one also, so just a little bit of an extra bonus on board if you're trying to squeeze Nakia in. I honestly still don't think this makes a big enough change for Nakia. Maybe if she's like a 3/3 or 3/4 probably too good, but a 3/3 where it feels like, you know, you're not sacrificing too much for your 3 cost play, she'd feel a little better, but I'm not sure 2 does the difference here for Nakia. But, you know, nice free bonus for a card that's not seeing much play. So we've also got Black Cat here going to 7 power instead of 6. You know, Black Cat, not a card that gets played much right now, even in discard decks where you might want to resummon her with something like Hela. Not a card that we see much. I don't think the 1 power is certainly going to change that at all. This does become a slightly more intriguing card for things like maybe Silver Surfer decks, where the turn you top deck Black Cat, she feels marginally better as a 3/7 than a 3/6, kind of that Maximus stat line that we see. The problem still, though, is, of course, if you don't have a payoff for the fact that she's discarded, anytime you get her prior to being able to play her, so turns 1 and 2 in particular, if she's in hand in your early opening hand or draw her early, she just gets discarded and she's a complete waste of a card. So it has to be those scenarios where you draw her late where she feels good, and I still don't know that 7 power is enough to make that compelling. I don't see a lot of decks making room for Black Cat here with just the 1 power bonus. So we've also got some changes here to Drax and Groot, and they're both getting changed in the same way. Basically, they're getting a base stat bump. So Drax is going from 4 to 5, and Groot is going from 3 to 4. So their base number is bigger, but their gaining number off their on reveal is smaller. So Drax is going to gain +3 instead of +4, and Groot's going to gain +2 instead of +3. So in essence, they're the exact same. If you hit on the on reveal when it connects, you get the same stats. If you whiff, though, you're getting a better card here, which is nice. So raising the floor a little bit on each of these is adding to that consistency, so it doesn't feel like such a down play if you don't connect on the on reveal, but still feels similarly rewarding if you do. And yeah, I think that's a nice free change to make the Guardians feel better. These are some pretty popular characters out there that don't get a lot of play right now in Marvel Snap, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Snap team wants to give a little bit more love to somebody like Groot, who, you know, tons of people love the character, but just doesn't see any play. So those are the card changes that were introduced in these patch notes. There were a few other feature things that I wanted to shout out really quickly. Apparently, we're going to get artist credits. You can now view the illustrator's information by clicking on the variant name above the card in the collection. It would also be really cool there if there was like a little bit of a story, a little snippet about the character or the variant or something. This is the venomized variant of this character. Symbiotes, you know, take over, blah blah blah, whatever, and you know, we got a little detail, just a couple sentences to add some extra flavor. That would be really fun to run through, turning the collection into almost an encyclopedia of Marvel beyond just all of that. I think it would make getting variants much more exciting to get to read something about them. Also, some updates to the game here. Automatically filter your favorite variants when editing your deck in the collection view. Now, if the section where multiple cards trigger each other is too long, the time it takes to finish the loop automatically increases. Remember, these are translated, by the way, so these aren't going to be exactly right. I think that means it'll happen faster, not that the time will increase. That sounds wrong. So Wong, Onslaught, Ironheart type things will resolve quicker. Orca will actually be added to Series 4 as was intended earlier, getting some Russian language support. There's going to be a new pro bundle that has 12,500 credits, and they're going to change collector's tokens a little bit so that now instead of getting 400, you'll get either 200 or 600. So the rate is going to stay the same, but sometimes you'll get spikes of 600. Sometimes you'll only get 200. That does not mean you're going to get 200 instead of 100 and 600 instead of 400. Only in the instance of the 400 rolls currently, they're just going to alternate. So it's still going to be the same average, just highs and lows. Just more RNG casino type stuff. Also, some new audio added to locations and some visual effects as well for Arrow. So some nice quality of life stuff, basically. And there was one other thing that popped up on Discord today that I wanted to address as well. There was a question about Series 5 cards dropping down into Series 4 and Series 4 cards dropping down into Series 3. We were promised this sort of trickle down of series for all these cards. Otherwise, you just get this endless supply of Series 5 cards that are impossibly expensive to access because the token price is so high. So the trickle down is supposed to help people get to these cards sooner, particularly for Series 3 cards moving in. You get those much quicker. And Ben Brode replied, still working on a plan. We will make sure to tell everyone as soon as we've got it figured out, which I know that is not a material update, but the update is that it's taking forever. I wish this were happening sooner because it's getting really hard for people to keep up with cards right now. There are people who are going to go a really long time without getting new stuff, and they're going to churn out of the game because they're bored not getting new cards, and it's just going to be so prohibitive to get new stuff. I don't think this is happening fast enough. They need to really start dropping these down quickly to make sure people stay engaged. With a new card coming out every week, I think they have the runway to do that without sacrificing the top end of their monetization model. So please, Ben Brode, make it happen faster. And yeah, that was basically the leaked patch notes coverage and some of the updates and stuff. I am very curious what you guys think about all of these changes, Leader in particular. I don't know if we'll cover these patch notes when they actually hit officially, but if there's any new surprises or changes, I'll be sure to update you guys, particularly because these aren't, again, 100% official. There may be more explanations, more context, more details, etc. in the final patch notes. Plus, there could technically be some confusion around the translation of all this as well, since this was in Korean originally, and now it's been auto-translated into English. Who knows exactly how this is going to read later. So, thanks much as always for watching. Stay tuned for more Marvel Snap videos, and until next time, game on.